We are back live again. I'm with one of my favorite people again. Welcome to Howard University. It's been an interesting week to say the least, and having some technical difficulties over here. Not sure what's going on with the power or whatnot. But if you do experience it, Dr. Fuller, you just keep going. One monkey don't stop no show. This is a very this is an important episode, man. And well, they're all important, but I think in light. And yesterday I went last night and I went live, Dr. Fuller. I didn't tell you, but I saw some young people from Oakland and they just had they were just misinformed. One of them said that Oakland has never stood up before, and I had to do a quick history lesson because I was in some of those standings, and I had to, and I had to also just educate about the Black Panther Party, and which is, it just goes to show how much our education system is failing us, that when young people in Oakland that have melanin in their skin don't know about the Black Panthers, that's scary.
That's real scary.
That's scary. And then I think too, it was the second post from a young person said, white people never act like this. So I went through 6 different moments in history where white folks got fed up with the power system and tore it down, took over local governments and did a whole bunch of stuff. So, you had asked me to do something and I wanted to make sure I honored it. You asked me to start off, just with my 10-point manifesto, and I'm gonna do that pretty quickly. And give some color to it. And then we're going to go into what you want people to take from this episode. And then we're going to have a real treat because we're going to be joined by a mutual friend of both of ours, one Jamie Jenkins, who I love and admire and adore. And you actually knew her before I did, but her spirit is just one of a warrior. And
I look forward to it.
Man, she's amazing, man. I just appreciate her. So let me just go ahead and jump into this. Some of you have read this, some of you haven't, but I want to be able to paint I want to be able to paint this picture for you a little bit. And also let me make sure everybody can hear us okay. All right. So the first thing that I said in my 10-point manifesto was I don't need if something were to happen to me through the violence from the state or white supremacy or whatever the case is, here are my 10 things. And I just want to be very clear. I know we have educators on the line with us today. I know we have school staff watching with us today. So I just wanted to be very honest where I stood personally. And I was not upset or angry when I wrote this. One, I don't need you to beg white people to not be racist on my behalf. It's dumb. It's beneath us. Don't beg anybody to love me that didn't love me already. That's not the existence that I wanted, and that's not anything that I want tied to my legacy at all. 2, don't say that I would have wanted peace. No, not really. I've seen how things change in this country, and I'm not advocating violence or whatever. But just don't put words in my mouth after I'm gone. I'm not giving the "we need peace today" manifesto. That's just not who I am. Maybe somebody else would, but that's rule number 2. Number 3, if somebody taped me getting killed and then they start to get famous on CNN by sharing the said tape, and they're of sound age and body, like they're not a child or an elderly woman that was holding the camera, but like an adult, I need you to snuff them. That's not. I needed them to put that camera down in that moment and come help me if they really about the things that most people say they're about. 4, I'm writing my own manifesto. I don't need you to go and speak to family members and parents and stuff, many of which I haven't spoken to in years. I promise you they can't give you where my psyche was at the moment when it happened. This is why I create so much content. You ain't got to go to nobody else. Just pull up one of my old videos or articles. I'm going to tell you how I feel. 5, please don't do a say his name campaign, anything like that. Again, I've watched. There's some folks that get famous off this stuff, and I'm not mad at them. Some of these people we need. I have no judgment, but no new stars should come from my death in that way. 6, and don't do that thing where you change the conversation from Black to people of color. There's a distinct difference. And what you do when you do that is you skirt having to have the real conversation about the real issues that Black people face in this country. Now, I stand in solidarity with a lot of groups, but when we are focusing on another specific group, if we talk about violence against the Latino community. I don't need you to come in and talk about me at that moment. If I'm standing in solidarity with them, I'm standing in solidarity on that movement, right? But right now we are having a Black conversation. What's happening to Black people, what has happened to Black people, because for what you will learn from Dr. Fuller is that this is not the first time this has happened. It's not even the first time this happened in this fashion before. 7, for the love of God, do not let Sean King do a fundraiser in my name. Just don't. I will haunt you in death. I will haunt you. Listen, I don't hate Sean King. I think he has a big bullhorn and the brother can do some good work, but no fundraisers tied from that dude to anything that happened to me. And this other one, man, don't let folks over intellectualize what happened. Dr. Fuller said this in one of our last episodes, and he said, feel the pain, feel it. Like, I don't need you to say Charles was murdered. Keep that guy free. I want that other guy free. What happens is people try to over intellectualize these things. 1, so they can be the only people talking about it, and 2, so that we still don't have to deal with what happened. We understand the emotions of somebody being murdered, and I think that sometimes folks just like to hear themselves talk. 9, don't let Diddy, whom I love and respect, I love his Revolt platform. I'm only upset about this family meeting that he had after this, and he had Amy Schumer and Sean King speaking on the platform. Listen, I get it. I get that there are people that need to speak to white folks directly. I understand that. Tim Wise has an amazing career off of saying regular things to white people, and obviously they can hear him because he's a white dude. I ain't mad at Tim Wise. I think he's important. But if it's a family meeting, then have it be a family meeting. I think that that's important. And then finally, I just want to reiterate this. A lot of you say some disrespectful stuff, and I don't think you mean it be disrespectful. They'll say things like, I'm not my ancestors, you'll catch these hands, as if people like Dr. Fuller and the folks that came before him in that ilk were soft or something, like they didn't stand up for themselves. How dare we say something like that when there's a Harriet Tubman in our bloodline? It makes no sense to me. So I just hate that saying. And we got a few people like George Zimmerman who is still walking around free as a bird in the age of you'll catch these hands. So I would say don't talk about it, be about it. Dr. Fuller, those are my 10. I know you wanted me to open up with those. And I know some folks here have seen them and heard those before. But before we move on to the 5 points that you want people to take away from today's session, and before we talk about brother Ernie Lacy, what's your reaction to those 10?
Well, as you know, you and I have talked about it, and I really appreciated you laying it out there. And I think, there are times when what you need to have happen is people need to speak clearly and forcefully. They don't need to be mealy mouth, and what I like about you is that you're not mealy mouth. And so whether people like what you had to say, don't like what you have to say, that the important thing is to say it, but to say it in real words. I guess you all say real talk, whatever y'all say. I mean, that to me is what's necessary at this moment in time, right? You can't be mixing words and trying to figure out, okay, what is the politically correct thing to say and this and that. You got to just put it out there, man, in real ways. And then if people want to debate you on that, at least they're debating you on real words. It's not a third level of abstraction. And so I just want to applaud you for putting it out there like that. And hopefully, some people are going to take heed. And maybe some people want to develop their own. If something happens to me, here's what I want you to do, and here's what I don't want you to do. That would be an interesting exercise that you have put out there. It'd be interesting to see how people feel about that.
Yeah, I think it is, man. And I know, somebody that cares about me a lot was like, man, it's just really sad that you have to be thinking like that, right? And I'm just like, it's one of those things, Dr. Fuller, where sometimes things just are what they are, and it is what it is. And I get it. It's definitely difficult to. Well, I don't know. It really wasn't difficult for me to have to do that, right? And I think that people listening, and if you're not Black and it's making you feel a type of way, you got to wrestle with that. You got to hold on to that, right? Because, what does it say about a society where I actually had no problem writing that at all? I wasn't emotional when I wrote it. Even as I read it and we talk about it now, there's not much feeling that kind of goes into it, right? Like there's like a numbness to it, right? And that's But this country, I've had to develop that muscle over time. Listen, man, I would be paralyzed if I felt a certain type of way every time something racist happened. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't get out of bed. Like, this is why, you know, I did basketball videos this whole week, man, because basketball, I love the basketball court more than I love most people, man. Like, that's my sanctuary, man. It gives me joy. And the one thing that I've tried to do during this whole time is make sure I captured my joy, you know, and I own my joy, right? So, you know, that's something that meant a lot to me, man. But I just wanted to appreciate you. And then you have some takeaways for people. And today is a very special day because some people think that this has not happened before. And you are here to say that, no, these things happen. So can you tell me real quick, brother, who is Brother Ernie Lacy? I'm going to try to get the pictures back up, man, but just go ahead and talk in the meantime.
So July 9th, 1981, a young black man named Ernest Lacy in the city of Milwaukee was on his way to the store, and a rape was committed. And so they had this tactical squad that was a part of the Milwaukee Police Department. And so these officers confronted Ernie Lacy, and they ended up killing him. And they ended up killing him by putting their knee on his neck, okay? And he ended up dying the next morning in the hospital. And the reason why this is critical for people to understand is not only have they been killing us, they've been using the same tactics to kill us. So Ernest Lacy was killed in 1981, man, with a cop putting his knee on his neck. And the headlines, you know, when we had to fight for an inquest, but here was the headline, right? Because we didn't have cell phones back then, but there were witnesses. And so the witnesses described the knee on the neck. The cop claimed that it was reasonable force and that he had concern that Lacy was trying to reach for his gun, okay? And there are witnesses talking about him laying on the ground with his arms up, and the dude got his knee on his neck. This dude right here. And so when I saw what happened to Mr. Floyd, I'm like, man, don't y'all go out here talking about, oh my God, this has never happened before. Yeah, no, the exact thing has happened before. And the one thing I want you all to clearly understand is that when this happens, and rage takes place, as it should, we all need to understand that rage doesn't have like a single dimension. Not all rage has a political aspect to it. You know, some people are not political who are out there in the street today. Some people are.
Right.
Some people are out there because they know that this is wrong, and they want their bodies to be a testament to the necessity for justice. But there are other people out there who see this as an opportunity to loot or whatever it is. But the thing is, you can't get sidetracked and start talking about that, because the central issue is they're killing us, man. And they've been killing us forever. And so the more time we spend talking, oh man, you know, people shouldn't be breaking into our stores and this and that. I get that that's happening. But none of this would be happening if the man had not been killed, like a dog on the street. And so the thing I also want people to understand is this is going to take a long time now, because it's going to get into the legal process, and it may be years before this case is resolved. So any of y'all who out there thinking, oh man, if we just get him arrested and get the other cops arrested, then it's going to be over. No, man, it ain't going to be like that, man. I sent you all those newspaper clippings.
Yeah, and you want me to make it? I can make it available for the public too, if you need me to.
But I don't have all of it. But we do a thing where we lay out the stages in our struggle. So, for example, he was killed on July 9th. They didn't hold an inquest until September. And there was 23 days of the inquest, man. And then once the inquest came out and said these dudes were guilty of reckless homicide, the DA then didn't press charges. So what people need to understand, man, is that all kinds of stuff can happen in between now and some level of justice. Because ain't no justice after you've been murdered, man. You know, it's a measure of justice. So, say they convict the dude. That is not justice for a man who's been murdered like a dog in the street. And so people got to get ready to see like this long period of time that's going to occur. And then this is what they're going to do. They're going to slander Mr. Floyd. Mm-hmm. And so what they did with Ernie Lacy was they tried to say that he was mentally unstable. He was on psychotic drugs. He was unemployable, blah, 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 blah. And initially, Charles, the medical examiner said he died from fright, Fright. And then there was another person, just like this dude said the other day, some white dude said, well, if Floyd was saying I can't breathe, it means he was still breathing. What happened with Lacy was they said he didn't say nothing. So then we didn't know that we was hurting him. So if you say something, it's a problem. If you don't say something, it's a problem. If you taking drugs, prescription drugs to help you, that's a problem. If you don't take the drugs, that's a problem. So that what people got to be ready for is the slander that's going to go down about Mr. Floyd, all of the contradictory testimony and all of this stuff. All of this is going to happen, my brothers and sisters. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
And I'm looking at this, which I ain't going to cut you off. They did it to you. So you were one of the people on the front lines. And I'm looking here at one of these clips where they were calling you a Marxist. They called you racist. They, you know, so when you were helping lead this movement, man, like what were the tactics that they used against you?
Well, they did a couple things. First of all, it was two of us, a brother named Michael McGee. His son has been active, but Michael McGee Sr. He and I were the co-chairs of the coalition. And so the first thing we had to do, man, the two of us had to get together, and this is what we agreed to. Because like Mike said, you'd have to know Mike to appreciate this. That, man, we shouldn't even be together, man, because, you know, you got a doctorate, or I don't know if I have my doctorate, but you know, one of these college educated Negroes and blah, 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 you know, but, and you know, I'm from the street, this and that, which none of that was relevant, right? But what I told Mike, what Mike and I agreed, we talked almost every night, man, for a year. Because what we agreed to is whenever somebody says something about him to me, I was going to tell him, and vice versa. Because one of the first things they try to do is they try to divide the people who are engaged in the struggle. Then they try to smear you, whoever takes the leadership. Did you know this about him? And then what they try to do is there's always police planet we had undercover cops as a part of the coalition. Just like when Malcolm was killed, and you can see the picture of the dude who was supposed to be one of his bodyguards, he was a member of the police. So they had all of that going on. So when you put together a struggle like this, and you're going to try to sustain it over time, you just have to be ready for all of the stuff that's going to come at you. And I know the people who are in the leadership of Black Lives Matter and any of you all who've done any kind of struggle at all know that one of the things they try to do is to discredit you, to take away the focus on the fact y'all murdered him. You know what I'm saying? And so just be ready for that. And you have to have the type of commitment, man, where first of all, it don't matter what they say about you.
Yeah.
But you don't spend no time talking about you. You keep bringing it back to the main point. Why was this man killed? Why did he have to die? Explain that. Explain why all these other Black people over all of these years had to die? What has that got to do with, what I think or what my political philosophy is or whatever? The question is, what is it about you that allows you to kill us on the streets? And we just have to keep bringing everything back to the main point. And if you are going to be a part of any type of coalition or group that's going to be fighting for Mr. Floyd or for the guy in Georgia or for the sister, that was killed, or Breonna Taylor. I mean, if you're going to be a part of that, then you have to be prepared to go the distance, right, and stay with it until you get some measure of justice.
Right. I mean, and I don't want to tell Jamie's story. But I remember we were talking and she was like, she sat her people down, her family down. It's like, look, I've been an activist for a long time and I got a big mouth. Like, basically, like, here's what's going to happen. Here's what, basically just kind of prepping them for what the process is going to be like when you're really out here. And it's funny, man. When I was even doing research for this show, I found this. I wrote this when I was younger. I got carte blanche with Huffington Post. This is when Ariana was still there, but this is in 2012. But one of my first articles was just on like my Black rage, right? And it's like, and some Black guy had just gotten killed right when I wrote this, right? Like, these things are cyclical and they continue to happen. But there's a playbook, man. There's a playbook every single time. And, that's why I had that point in there, which was meant a lot to me, was just saying, like, look, I don't even want it litigated, because I know the games that get played when things get litigated. Either they will overcharge or undercharge. So overcharging, for instance, in the George Zimmerman case. Well, if you're trying to go out the first degree murder, right? Well, just by the letter of the law, premeditated or whatever, it gets really murky or whatnot, right? Like, they play these games with people when it gets into that realm when we have no power in it. Before we bring in Jamie, I wanted to just go over, because you had 5 takeaways, Dr. Fuller, and I want us to contextualize that a little bit. So people, get your pens ready, because I know y'all going to ask me for these later. So 1, you said that we should understand the central question. It's not that the protesters or the violence. It's the fact that we continue to be killed by the police. In most instances, nothing happened to those that kill us. That's kind of self-explanatory, but if you need to color that, go ahead.
No, I just think that we can't allow ourselves to get dragged into a discussion about whether or not people should be looting stores, right? Because once you go down that road, you start taking away from, look, I understand people looting stores. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the fact that this man was murdered on the street. And you have to keep coming back to that point over and over again.
Right. The second one, any society that builds in inequity must also prepare for periodic uprisings. The goal is to pacify, not to change.
Yeah, so everybody got to be clear, man, that the reaction that is currently happening is not to fundamentally change the nature of a society that is inequitable. It's to pacify us. It is because any society that builds inequity and racism and whatever you all want to call it into the very nature of that society, they understand that at different points in time, there are going to be eruptions. Mm-hmm. And so they factor in the fact that these eruptions are going to take place. And then when they do take place, then the question is, how is it that we pacify these people so that we can stop the eruption, but we don't change the fundamentals of the inequalities? And we certainly ain't going to change the fundamental of the power relationships. And so it's clear that we understand that strategy.
Man. Number 3, rage has many different dimensions, which I think you just started talking about, and my piece that I brought up was talking about. But just go ahead again, because I think people will continue to veer off the path and want to talk about everything but the issue. And that's going to be a tactic. That's what the president did last night.
Oh, man, he's a fool, man. What they did last night, man, with those, quote, nonviolent protesters, right, to clear a way so that this man could go stand in front of a church and hold up a Bible, man. I mean, that was like, it was like, what? Is this some kind of like theater? What is this? But this was the president of the United States of America, man, doing this. But again, what I'm trying to say is that when rage happens and people hit the street, there's no one entity. There's different groups of people who are out there for very different reasons. And that's just the nature of how rage happens. But again, you got to keep coming back to, but why is the rage there? What is it that is actually happening? And I always, I know you have to do this where people keep coming back saying, yeah, but you got to remember that the vast majority of the people were peaceful. And that's true. But we also got to understand that there are people who are enraged. There are people who are hurting. There are people who are in pain. And so we can't just minimize that as a factor. Mm-hmm. So that was the point I was trying to make with that.
I think that's a good one. Number 4, we must fight even when victory is not possible, because not to fight is to co-sign on the injustice.
Yeah, that's something that I try to say over and over again. I got from Derek Bell, because yesterday they were doing an interview with me on TV, and they were asking me about, what do I see as being hopeful? And my answer was nothing. I mean, I can't sit up here and say I'm hopeful. I mean, I think it is significant, like in Milwaukee, and I've seen in other places, that it is an interracial response. It's not just Black people, it's brown people, it's white people, all of that. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that there's going to be any significant change. Everything that I've seen over all of these years that I've been out here tells me ain't nothing going to happen of any significance. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I have a responsibility to say that to you, man. I'm not going to say, oh, man, I really see some hopeful signs. I don't see no hopeful signs, man. But again, I hope that I'm wrong, right? But whether you see hope or not, you have to get out there and fight, man, because not to fight is to say that this is okay.
Man. And then 5, history does not repeat itself in a circular fashion, stand on the same axis. It moves horizontally, meaning history can repeat itself, but not under the same historical conditions. Break that down for us, Doctor.
So like, history doesn't repeat itself like this. It repeats itself like this. Mm-hmm. So it means that something can occur like Lacey, that, and you can say it's exactly the same. Well, it's not exactly the same as Floyd, because it's taken place under a different set of historical conditions. So, for example, in the Lacey case, there were eyewitnesses. In the Floyd case, there was a video. You know what I'm saying? So you got to see how the same thing happens, but it happens on a whole set of different historical conditions, which creates a different set of circumstances for struggle.
Man, that was a lot. It was a lot, and I'm really happy that we got the next guest that we have in. Now, my power went out and her bio went away, but I'm just going to talk about it from the heart. Jamie Jenkins is somebody that I met a while back. We used to work for the same organization, but in different regions. And I met her when I used to work with this sister named Huette. And she's just one of the most powerful people that I've ever met. I'm just going to say a little bit, but Dr. Fuller, I know what you mean to her and what she means to you. So I'm actually going to have you give your thoughts and fond memories of Jamie to bring her in, because I just know it's going to mean a lot. I'll just say that, Harriet Tubman is my favorite historical figure. And there are times where I feel like this woman is walking around as a second incarnation of this person. So Jamie a little better than I do. Tell us who Jamie is while we bring her in.
Yeah, so if ever you want to talk about someone who has like a revolutionary spirit, it's like Jamie, right? And because of the way that Jamie is, she ties it back to our ancestors. She ties it back to, the historical basis for her existence as a person of African descent. But Jamie is an activist, but she's also like an educator. And I just love her, man, because Jamie speaks truth, at all times, no
At
matter
all
what,
times. At all.
no matter
At
what
all
the
times.
circumstances are, right? So anytime I could be in her presence, it's like a good day, man.
Well, it's about to be a great day for you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jamie Jenkins to the conversation. How you doing, Jamie?
Y'all know how to do that. Y'all got me grinning and
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really good. I really enjoyed listening to those points, Dr. Fuller. I was sitting here nodding.
It's good to see you, dear. I ain't seen you in so long.
I know.
I'm sorry, kind of under these circumstances in a certain sense, but it's really great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
I mean, well, Jamie, you're one of the fiercest people that I know, and just why don't you just tell us where you are with everything that's happening? And I don't know if you were on and heard Dr. Fuller talk about Mr. Lacey and just what he went through during the Lacey, when they were protesting and pushing back. And Dr. Fuller, before the show is over, don't forget to tell us how that concluded, what happened. But Jamie, just talk to us real quick. How are you feeling, and what's your reaction to everything going on?
What's interesting is yesterday I was at Fort Oak Cliff. It's a community center here in Dallas, working with my interns. We're working on converting our in-person summer program to a virtual program for the kids. And so we were getting stuff ready to train the rest of the interns. So this is my intern leadership team, and we're getting stuff ready to train the rest of the interns. And I'm pulling all this stuff up and putting it in this drive. And the director of the program goes, "Dang, you did that fast. You already got all this stuff ready." I was like, "Do you understand? All I've been doing is preparing for 2020 my whole life." So the way that I feel right now is actually good. I feel in sync for the first time. I feel like most of my adult life, I've kind of felt like the crazy person in the room. And oddly, even in the midst of all of this chaos, it's like, well, here it is. I've been trying to tell folks it's here now. But that's a long-winded way of me saying I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, so you heard those points that Dr. Fuller just spoke on. What do you want people to know? I mean, it's a big platform. It's going to be a few thousand people that might watch this that may not have had your type of energy around them. So let these folks have it, man. What do they need to know about this moment that we're in right now?
So I've been thinking a lot about the fact that over the past, I would say 10 years in particular, there's been a lot of decentralization of our people. And so when we're reacting to this, there is that rage that Dr. Fuller is talking about, righteous rage. But I know that a lot of people in the conversations I've been in, people have been hitting me up trying to figure out like where to go. What do we do? And so the conversations I've been having is like, we need to actually start thinking strategically and specifically about what it is we're trying to do. Number one, right now, I don't know if y'all know, today was supposed to be a Blackout Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine called just a second ago. She's like, I don't think people understand why we're doing these blackouts. And I was like, yeah. So one of the things we could start doing as educators is talking to people about like, all right, when you have a blackout, you log out of an account. The reason why you want to log out is because it takes the capital down from that account. The other reason why you want to log out is because you can start to have conversations offline with other people that you're organizing with and start figuring out what you want to move on. The suggestions that I'm making to people about this week, though, is this is the prime time for us to start power mapping. I'm asking a lot of my friends, activists, organizers, educators, etc., like, who's in your network? What organizations are they connected to? What do they do? What resources do they have? Do you know? Question number one. And most of us actually have not done that. So I'm saying like there are like very small, tangible things that we can be doing immediately. But for the long run, I think it's time for us as, especially the educators, organizers, activists, to start figuring out where are we going to migrate our spaces to? Because right now we're on spaces like Facebook, Instagram, all of that. When we're blacking out, where are we migrating to so that we can have these conversations and organize? ultimately, all of us have been moving and doing a lot of things for several years, but we have not had a concerted effort or any kind of systematized work around it. That's what I'm hoping that we can do.
Go ahead, Dr. Fuller, jump in with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just listening to Jamie and understanding this. But you know what it is to me? It just brings up again the different ways that you have to wage struggle in different historical periods, right? Because you got different tools, right? Available, and and I'm always trying to, as both of y'all know, learn from you all in terms of how you all see wage and struggle at this moment in time. And I feel like my role is to bring any kind of historical information to the conversation, but the leadership of it at this moment in time has to take place with you all, and with whatever the methods that you are using. And so for me, it's just a learning experience at this moment.
Well, I think you said something really important, and I think Jamie highlighted this just in how, she sprung into action. I think it's, what is your role in this moment? Like, look at yourself and ask yourself, what is your role? Now, everybody, like you said, man, everybody can't storm the Bastille at the same time. That's not everybody's role, right? Like, I understand this digital space a little bit and how to kind of put these together or whatnot. So, hey, when Jamie says we need to educate people so they understand what's happening, and maybe my role in that is to give her the platform and say, okay, here, however you want to explain and get his lesson and amplify it out, let me help. Dr. Fuller, I think that while there are new tactics and there's new equipment and new tools, I think there are some principles that you are grounded in, and I think that you have to continue to share with us. And somebody asked in the comments, and I want to make sure we answer them. When you had said, I ain't got a hope message to tell you right now, and she was basically asking, well, if hope is lost, then what do we do? I have an answer for that because I kind of feel similarly, just around. I don't think it's my role isn't to be the hopeful person. I don't see that as my role. My role is to give you the facts, and my role is to give you my experience and to have my face look dry and have not a whole bunch of emotion in it, because I would be faking to you if I was overly scared in this moment. It would be fake of me if I was overly emotional, because I've been dealing with this shit in different ways for a long time. And kind of how Jamie said, I've been preparing for 2020. I have felt like I was the crazy person in the room. So, Dr. Fuller, what would you say to that viewer who loves us and who checks in on all these shows, right? That's looking for hope. What would your message be to her?
Yeah, I think maybe I need to explain it this way. On Saturday, the students at our school are going to have a graduation. It's not going to be the same type of graduation that we've had year after year, but we're trying to have as many of the elements of it, like the Kente cloth ceremony and all of that, as we can. I have hope for those young people, right? I mean, I love them. I have hope for them. But at the same time, I'm not hopeful that the world that they're going to be living in is going to recognize their genius and care about what it is that they bring to the table. And so whatever they want to do, they're going to have to force their way onto the agenda. It's not like there's an agenda set to help them, but I'm not hopeful that in the macro political dynamic, you're going to see significant change. I'm always hopeful about the struggle of our people. You know what I mean? About the fact that there's going to be resistance. There's going to be individuals like you who are not going to buy into the okie doke and the pacification process. That always gives me hope. But what I'm not hopeful about is the larger political change that will take place. And if that's what people are looking for, I just don't know what words to use to tell you. But if what you're looking for is a change inside of yourself, if what you're looking for is the fact I'm never going to accept oppression, then I'm always hopeful when I talk to folks like you that ain't going to happen. right? At an individual level and hopefully at a collective level. It's just understanding that distinction, which may not be that simple.
And Jamie, how about you? How would you, because I think it's an earnest question that she was asking, and what would you say?
I got all the hope. I think I'm somewhere in the midst of what Dr. Fuller was saying, and my hope comes from the place of there is this self-study, this self-transformation that I'm witnessing happening in people. And I have a fundamental belief that systems are just groups of organizations, and organizations are groups of people. And if we can start the habit of, one, understanding how we can transform ourselves, it'll help us to better understand, like, okay, in my immediate network, who are the people that I know who are also activated in the same way that I am? And what can we do? How can we be an organization of people, of lights, of change? And then from there, how do we grow this out? So my hope comes in not necessarily the political system that exists. That been dead to me. I that's a whole other conversation. But I will say though, I have, like in this moment, I have so many people hit me up ready to go. Like ready to go, hitting me up. What do you need? What do we need to do? What are the orders? Like that's what's been happening. And for me, that's magical because we've been in this situation before, but that didn't happen. I didn't have those calls. So I got a lot of hope. So I would say to that person, if hope is what you need, find the people who inspire you and feed into you. Get it there. And you don't need much. You only need a couple of people. Go get it from them.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I think for me, it goes back to the number one piece that I started in my manifesto. And what I said was, don't beg people to love me that don't love me. And I don't have hope as long as we're doing that. As long as we keep trying to act like these people don't know what's going on, or that racism is like this new novel thing, or they get to be shocked. Oh, we allow people to be shocked every 20 years about racism, right? And so my hope is in us. My hope is in saying, look, here are the resources that I got. Here are the people that I have that's next to me that can do these things. I mean, that's when I think I would start feeling a lot more hopeful. I think hope means a lot of different things to different people. And and listen, man, I'm one of these people. We ain't got to get along to live along, right? Like I'm, and that's again that is hard for some people to hear, right? But one of the best blessings of my life was living with my grandmother in Paducah, Kentucky. And in Paducah, Kentucky, the lines are drawn very clearly around, where the racist white folks are, where the rich white folks are, the poor white folks. Like there's like a decorum that's agreed upon between the black and the white folks, and it sounds archaic and it sounds wild, right? But it was a system and rules that I could understand. It wasn't until I moved to California with like this fake liberalism or this fake we all love each other thing, but you losing every job, or people always whispering about you aggressive. Listen, man, I tell people this all the time. I'm the square in my group of friends. I'm the square where I come from. Right. And I think on some level, y'all are too. And what you mean by that is if I'm too much for you, if Charles Cole is too much for you, if Jamie is too much, if Dr. Howard Fuller is too much for you, then you really don't love Negro. You really don't want to fix the problem of oppression in the way that you think you do. And I went through this in my doctoral program where I would just push back intellectually on somebody. And I would say, but what happens when you get a real kid who is broken spiritually and you're supposed to be the educator for that person and they ain't feeling it that day and they say, bitch, I'm not listening to you no more. Are you going to reproduce this system of racism? See, racism, it ain't the lynching in the same way that people want to project it to be, man. It's suspending that kid in, forever and putting that stamp on his back because he's hurting and your job was to educate him. So if we're talking about hope in that realm, then I don't have much of it. So I wasn't trying to be controversial, but I just wanted to be honest around, people think that they down for these causes and they down for us, But if you scared of me, I follow laws, baby. I like to dress nice. I like to chill. I don't bother nobody. You ain't seen what you think you seen. And I don't have time to teach you.
I would say that's another thing too. Part of the reason why I think I might have a whole lot of hope is I've decentered a lot of that. So when we all met, I was in an organization that was messing my whole world up energetically. I had to uproot myself and subtract myself from that. The work that I do now is with Black children, primarily Black and brown children. I work directly with other activists and organizers who want to do the work. And so I'm fed all the time because I have people around me who want to move. The people who ain't trying to move, forget about them. I don't put my energy there. And so it doesn't subtract from me in the same way. And I think that might be making a difference in my life too.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Fuller, you just heard both Jamie and I speak, and you got my youthful zest in that comment. Just then. Teach me, Baba.
But you all understand. I don't believe in that. I mean, I think the teaching and learning goes both ways, right? I don't, I'm not sitting here as some fountain of anything, right? I'm just a lone Black man out here trying to fight, And what I appreciate is the fact that we come at this maybe from different perspectives, but I think what holds us together is a fundamental love for our people, because I deeply believe that if you can't feel the pain of our people, if you see this stuff as an abstraction, as a theory, as an intellectual exercise, I ain't got nothing for you, man, because right now, if you care about us, you feel the pain. Just think about what it was like to be laying on that ground with this man's knee on your neck. And you know that this person did not see you as a human, as like a human being. And so I'm feeling Mr. Floyd's pain, but I'm also feeling the pain of all of our people, man, who got the virus. The pain of people right now. Like we're blessed, man, because we sit here, on this technology, and we got food, clothing, shelter. Think about all our people, man, who have none of that. You know what I mean? Who have little food, little shelter, little clothing, no money. And it ain't gonna get better next week. This ain't gonna be this gonna quickly bounce back. So for me, it's like whatever it is I'm doing, it starts by feeling that pain. It doesn't start with an intellectual exercise, right?
Right.
It starts with and it's a historical pain, right? It's not like just a current pain. It's like a historical pain, right? So it is Sojourner's Truth pain. It is Fannie Lou Hamer's pain. It is all of these people who come before us, and then it is the pain of people who have been murdered and their relatives. Think about what they're going through at this moment in time.
Right.
And so that's what drives me, no matter whether I have hope or whatever. I get up every day understanding that pain, and it's that pain that gets me up to say, you must do whatever you can do on every given day to try to mitigate some of that pain for our people. That's how I approach it.
I mean, when I listen to that, and Jamie, I want to give you the floor, because I get to run my mouth all the time. I want these people to hear from you. What Dr. Fuller just said, what's your reaction to that?
I respect it. I was thinking how do I start my day? What does that look like? And every day I wake up, I write down the dreams that I had the night before. Every night that I'm dreaming, I'm working on something. Every single night. It's like I go somewhere, I'm doing work for this world, and I come here. And I spend time in the same way, traveling back in time, understanding what my ancestors went through from both sides of it, And something that you said, Charles, that means the world is when you're like, this might be Harriet coming back through this body. I channel that. I channel those things in the morning. And so I think that's a very real thing. However we start our day, it may be different. But I do feel like, I guess I'll say it like this. All I think about is freedom. That's it. Every single day. I start the day with a mantra for freedom. I got a freedom frame right here, the word. All I think about every single day is freedom. I say a pledge. I read books about freedom activists. I'm reading Josephine again right now. Like, that's all I do every single day. I talk to people about freedom. And I think whatever that vision is that we have each day is what is going to move us. For me, I believe if we could define freedom, not just from the sense of like what we've been through in this land, but also from the sense of what we can imagine prior to this. There is some kind of history that exists. We might not have all of the pieces, but if at minimum we can remember that there was a time before this and start connecting to that, I do believe that we can find some level of strength in that as well.
You know, and I look at this picture. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, that Jamie just said, and I don't know if we agree on this, but like the main thing for me is like what Hotep said about freedom. That freedom is not a place; it's like a launching pad. It's like this continual struggle for purpose and direction, right? And that what freedom ostensibly allows us to do is to stay on that trajectory. Because I would argue that when we came out of slavery, we were liberated, but we were not free. And that quest for freedom continues until this moment, right? And to have freedom as like the goal is a hell of a thing, Jamie, because then the question is, what does that look like? You know, what does freedom look like?
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah. Tell us what that looks like.
All right. So I think we do disagree. Here's why.
All right.
I think we've been free the entire time. The entire time. I believe that we have been held in captivity while being free people. I believe that the Emancipation Proclamation gave us the illusion that we were being released, but we have been in captivity. But I think we are free people in captivity if we can process that. I think that freedom is a spiritual embodiment. We are born free, we are free, we die free. But we exist in a society that believes that it can convince us that we are not. And so long as we believe that, we participate in it. I believe that oppression is a cycle that is not just something that happens to people. There is also a submission that we have to give to it. There's agreement. It's not an easy agreement, but there is an agreement between what roles we're going to play and what we're not going to do. This is the reason why I think that we have these varying degrees of engagement that you were talking about. Like, what does it look like when somebody decides I'm going to die for this? And what it looks like when somebody's like, I'm going to navigate this system and figure out how we're going to make it. I think that is just different relationships to like how we embody freedom. So I think you're right. I don't think that, well, I won't say right or wrong. I'm gonna say we disagree on certain points to this. Yeah. I think I'm a free person. I think we've always been free this entire time. And it's that, I think it is that exercise of figuring out like what is freedom exactly. I think that is the place where we need to be. I think we need to have that discussion a little bit more. So
Charles, what you're seeing is a dinner conversation between me and Jamie. This is how it goes.
Well, I mean, you know,
this is how it goes when we get together. Like, okay.
I don't know if mine falls in between or on either side of it. I think that you know, when I look at freedom, right? Like, and people get mad when I do this, but I always bring in how I grew up. Like, I bring in the fact that I lived in 4 shelters, and like, and my movements was controlled by somebody else, and my parents, and watching my parents be on drugs, and like, I've seen the ills of like the human condition. Like, I feel like I've seen the human condition at its worst. So I experienced these things a little bit different. I remember, and I put these up because one, I just put up you earlier. I wanted it up there because you, man, you've been fighting for so long, right? And I don't know how it feels to see the exact same fight that you was fighting as a young man still kind of be here, and the same tactics, you know, being used and just starting all over, right? That, to me, that gotta be discouraging on some level. But for me, you know, I put this up here. I remember this is 2014. This is in the Mike Brown case. And I remember these cops, man, and they, you know, they put us on the curbs, and then they jacked us up and put us on these stairs and was like, you move, I'm gonna bash your fucking head in, right? I've been in these marches, and that night I was ready, man. Like, I was ready for whatever was like about to happen, right? And so when I think about freedom, you know, my freedom is in my joy. So for me, it is, if I can get up in the morning, eat some breakfast, and go to a basketball court and just have a moment of joy and bliss to myself, I get to be free in that moment. There have been times where I have not felt free, though. And Jamie, I love the way that sound. I love the way that you said it. But let me tell you some moments where I might not feel free. I might not feel free when I'm on a Zoom call, and if I'm quiet on the call, it's like, oh, he ain't got a contribution. But when I hold a standard as a Black man in that call, now I'm aggressive again, right? Like I live in a world that somebody can utter that they don't feel comfortable, and it changes the state of my livelihood. You know what I mean? I think that when I look at it like that, that's why I try to be so independent on everything, right? It's like, no, I want to start my own company. No, I want to have my own broadcast. I appreciate you publicizing my stuff, but I want to make sure I got my own website to say what I want, when I want, and how I want. Because sometimes, man, we kind of at the whim of folks. And I think that for me, I'm tired of being at the whim of people. Like, I mean it when I say I'd rather be dead, man. I'm not going back to that shelter. I'm not going back to the way I felt in that shelter. I will die first. I will happily, and I need people to understand this, man. I'm not being dramatic. I'm not putting on. I will happily die before I have to live the same way in the type of squalor that I grew up in. And that, whether that's white people, Black people, whomever, like, something gonna happen. And so I feel free in that moment, and I feel free in that statement. So I don't know where that falls and lands with where you are, but I think it's to your point earlier, Dr. Fuller, is that rage in this moment and activism means different things to different people. And you got 3 people right here that love each other, that know each other and respect each other, that all got little slants. Mm-hmm. And if the 3 of these type of people start working together around some stuff like this, you better watch out. Because one of us might want to shake your hand and talk to you and educate you. And one of us might want to pick up a tire and bust you upside your fucking head.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, each one of us brings to this conversation our experiences, right? Our lived experiences, mm-hmm. and what it is that we've learned through study, right? So when people start talking, for example, about I'm gonna lay hands on you or whatever, that's all interesting. The question is, are you really when the mm-hmm. time comes? Mm-hmm. Because I actually have been beaten by the police. The night we demonstrated to protest the Orangeburg massacre, the night that I got arrested in Durham because we were running down the street breaking out windows, and I was beaten by the police. I was taken down to the jail. I was beaten in the elevator on the way up. And they put me in a cell with a dude who had stabbed a woman 50 times with a butcher knife because they thought that this dude was going to do something to me, except I knew him and knew the woman he had killed because she worked for me. So I'm saying, for me, these experiences that I've had clearly colors like how I see the world today, mm-hmm. right? And so I'm not asking a person who may not have had those same experiences to see the world in the same way that I do, mm-hmm. right? But what I know is, like, for the 3 of us on this call, no matter how we get up in the morning and what we see and how we see it and what gets us. The thing that binds us is a deep love for our people.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we know that our people have been oppressed and that Mr. Floyd is just the latest extension of that oppression. And that if you feel that pain and if you feel that for whatever it is that gets you up, then you got to fight. You have to get up and you have to fight. And you have to fight in whatever ways you know to fight.
Right.
I mean, that's just how.
So you know, I want to make sure, because I know we normally only go an hour, but this is the good thing when you own the platform, you can do whatever you want. But Dr. Fuller, before we give these people things that they can leave with and do, what happened in the case? What happened in the Mr. Lacy's circumstances?
Okay, so the inquest went on for 23 days. See, that's why I'm telling people, when this stuff starts happening with Floyd and it gets into this legal process, just be prepared for, like, you may not know the result of this for 5 years, literally, by the time it winds its way through all the court process. But what they did was they convicted the dude who, there were 3 of them who actually, you know, had him down on the ground. They convicted them, or not convicted them, the inquest panel charged them with homicide by reckless conduct for 3 of them. And then another, 2 of the 3 were also charged with misconduct in public office. None of them spent 1 second in jail.
Damn.
And ultimately, the only thing that happened was one of them got fired. Okay? So that's why I'm telling people, fight, but don't get your hopes up about the level of, quote, justice that will occur in this case or any of these cases, right? But at the same time, you must do what you're doing. You know, I mean, I applaud the people who are doing what they do, because if you don't do what you're doing, you know for a fact nothing will happen. And so, man, that was one of the most difficult things, man, and then after the DA refused to, the judge issued an order for them to be arrested, and the DA countermanded that order because it was coming from an inquest panel as opposed to a legal, not legal, because the inquest is like quasi-legal. It wasn't coming from the courts. It was coming from an inquest panel. So there were all of these technicalities that you get caught up in when ultimately they're not trying to, quote, give us any measure of justice. Wow.
So what do you want to lead these people with? Jamie, I'm going to start with you. What do you want to leave people with? You can take this. This is your time. You can tell us whatever you need to tell us, whatever's on your heart, whether you want to give out directives or just do something for you. But this is your moment to say bye to these people. What you got? All
right. So I've been thinking about the fact that this has been repeating over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, what is my role? My role has always been to see beyond the moment. And what do we need to be thinking about? And so I would suggest that each of us start to think about our roles concretely. What are we uniquely gifted to do? What are we here on earth to do before we die? Figure out our relationship with death, and if we're afraid of it, and figure out what those fears are preventing us from doing. Face the fears. I think the next thing is actually looking at your network of people and getting really specific about who you know and what they can do. To give an example, I reached out to all of my white friends and said, here are the things that I need from y'all. Number 1, I need y'all to organize your white activist groups to call police precincts, identify the names of all of the police officers in those precincts, figure out the history of those people, criminal conduct, and start demanding that they are charged. Anybody who has observed crimes and or participated in crimes, demand that they are charged and dismissed. So charged and dismissed. Keep doing it. And so I'm asking for the Karen network to get to work, essentially. I've also asked the people who are in my network that are Black to get with their organizations to start talking about blackouts and boycotts. Why do we have them? How do they work economically? And what do we do during those times? For my group of people, I've suggested that we start preparing for this Freedom Summer. So this week we are power mapping, and we are starting to find other platforms besides Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, et cetera, to start organizing on. We are also deciding to have a celebration on the 20th. We're calling it our Freedom Day. So talking about freedom and believing ourselves as free, I believe that is the first step to actually activate freedom. I think you have to believe yourself is free. And then finally on the 21st, we're suggesting that we boycott. So not just blackout. Blackout is symbolic. Boycott is stopping economic flow. And we are suggesting that we boycott conglomerate organizations and demand their support in getting our demands met. We will continue to boycott conglomerate organizations until we get our demands met. Those are the suggestions that I'm making right now.
Well, I appreciate you, Jamie, and I look forward to helping you have a megaphone if you so choose to need one. Dr. Fuller, what you want to lead these people with, brother?
Yeah, in terms of what I'm doing, I appreciate what Jamie laid out. I'm doing 3 or 4 things. Number one, I'm going to continue to try to get this information about Lacey out there so that people will know what has happened historically, because I'm working with a group of everybody's younger than me, but I'm working with a group of young activists in the community, and I'm getting this all stuff out to them. The second thing is that we've been working on some education stuff for our children, and we're calling it Surge between July and September, because one of the things that happened in Milwaukee was in the Milwaukee Public Schools, the union and the district had an agreement that they would do no work while the shutdown was happening, that everybody would get paid, but they didn't have to do any work. And so because of the outrage, there was about 6 weeks when nothing organized happened for a significant number of kids. And so one of the things we're trying to do is between July and September, we're trying to develop a portal or a platform that will have a number of a number of education programs that people will be able to access for their children. So we're trying to make sure that we pull that together. And then obviously the third thing is I'm just trying to encourage the kids at my school. Because we got the seniors who are going to graduate on Saturday, and I've been asked to put together a speech, and I really have no idea at this moment what I'm going to say. I mean, I went back to "Wretched of the Earth," by Frantz Fanon, and he talked about this notion: every generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission and either fulfill it or betray it. And so for me, my message has to somewhere connect to that in terms of what their mission is at this particular moment in history. So those are 3 things I'm working on.
Cool. I think for me, one, this was a blessing. I want to continue to create content like this. Howard University is such a blessing to me to be able to put this out there and educate people in ways that I think they haven't been educated. Those young folks were in their 20s that I referenced earlier that lived in Oakland and didn't know about the Panthers, and that thought that white folks never actually had uprisings like this. That they're in their 20s. That's not, so I think education, using what I have, and giving different platforms to people. I want Jamie to have a platform like this where she can break these things down, using this platform to lift the voices of young people and just letting them just have a place where they can just ask questions, get their emotions out. And then we'll get our mission based off of their questions around what they know and what they need to know and what they've been misinformed by. I think the other thing, man, is, making sure that I'm good, like taking care of myself in a sense, make sure I'm healthy, make sure I'm eating better than what I've eaten before. One of the most revolutionary things I think can happen in this moment is like being joyful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I remember this playing ball. It was just one team. I wanted to beat them just really bad. And we was beating them. Like we were up by like 30 points. But you looked on the other side and they were just having fun. And it just like deflated us, man. It was like, you ain't supposed to be having fun. We beating the brakes off you. That's what I've been trying to do, right? And I just saw, even at like 16 years old, I just saw how powerful that was. When people go through with a racist plan of holding you down or whatever the case is, and they like, oh, wait, we still ain't stopping their joy. And I think finally, man, I really think that we don't know how dope we are as a people. I really don't think that we know. I've said this before. In the places where we take the bull by the horns and just lead, whether it's music, it's fashion, it's hair, it's Insecure on HBO, in those, we run the world. This little 13.6% of us in the United States, we run culture. But in everything where we try to chase white people with is money, when it's education, and we trying to do things the way white people do, we are at their teat and at their beck and call. And at some point, we got to realize that and just build our stuff and just be who we are. So that may not have made sense to a lot of people. There's
perfect sense to me.
There's obviously a lot of emotions that's here. I thank God for the both of you. You all have been in another session of Howard University. And we will see you next week. Peace.
Peace and power.
And power. We are